Let's talk about threats. This is perhaps one of the most important aspects besides your negotiables and non-negotiables, which sets up your entire context to what you want in a property and the lens in which you look at everything. Threats is the next thing that we want to look at before we go into our evaluations, because if we can identify a threat, then we can disqualify that property right away. So let's talk about what are some things that are threats. So mostly we're talking about things that are outside of your control, because if they're outside of your control, then you can't do anything to change them. So one of those would be you're in a flood zone. That could be an immediate threat. And if I was looking at a property and I saw that a property was in a flood zone, I would immediately disqualify it. Another threat could be you're in a tornado alley. Then I would see that and I would immediately disqualify the property. It's not even worth looking at further. Another threat could be big ag. You could be in an area where if you pull the lens back a little bit on Google Earth and you see you're surrounded by GMO agriculture that's spraying Roundup Ready crops all the time, you don't want to be living near that, especially for a homestead. Another one could be oil and gas development. We've looked at a lot of properties all over North America that are close to oil and gas. So it's not necessarily the worst thing to be in an area, say a number of kilometers, but I wouldn't want to be anywhere too close to oil and gas development. If there's fracking going on, that could be contaminating your water, things like this. Another threat could be you're near a cell tower or you're near a commercial power line and too close. You don't have to be, you can have them in your area, but to be too close, and this is also something that comes into your non-negotiables as well, but anything that is potentially hazardous to your health, the development of your homestead, these are things that are threats. So another example of a threat could be, here's an example of a friend of mine's property where he didn't see this and it turned out to be a major deal. So he was on a property on a large acreage, and just a little bit uphill from him was a big deforested clear cut. And this turned out to be a massive liability when they got huge rains because all of the runoff came through their property. So that's a major threat. Now, you can remedy a threat like that easier than you could remedy a threat of big ag or oil and gas development around you, because you could do some earthworks and change some things with that. But it's still important to identify right away. So in our process, once we understand what our negotiables and non-negotiables are, the next thing we want to do is immediately look for threats. And for the most part, how I do that is I pull the lens back a little bit and just get a sense of what's around us. What are our neighbors like? What are the properties around us doing? Going a little bit further and then identifying things like oil and gas development or major highways or things like that. And then we can look at some of our statistical data and then look at the socioeconomics and see if there's any potential threats there, like crime, really low median income can be a threat in that if there's an area that has a lot of crime, there's a lot of property theft and vandalism, things like this. These are threats and they're outside of your control, and there's only so much you can do to change them.